Small business owners and workers in New York City say they are fed up with vandalism, violent attacks at a lot of retail stores. They perceive this as a refusal by the city to crack down on shoplifting.
Businesses in New York City are under attack, and that's because the criminals here fear nothing. But things have gotten so bad, store owners are now begging for help, only to find out that the very government that's supposed to protect them has sided with the criminals for some reason.
Surveillance video captured this armed holdup at a deli in the East Village. You can see one suspect pulling a gun on a worker while others take cash from the register.
They would literally strip the shelves of everything within a matter of seconds.
And are there some retailers that are targeted more often than others?
Unfortunately, this type of crime happens at all times. And there's shoplifting going on in supermarkets and bodegas.
Navarro tells us what the video did not capture, and that the suspect took not one, but 3 swipes, but the first 2 times, the box cutter blade was retracted.
The NYPD released this video, which they say shows an officer running after a man who allegedly stole a purse on the subway.
Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie has come under fire for refusing to back a bill that would increase penalties for attacks on retail workers.
A recent study reported shoplifting increased 64% in New York City from 2019 to mid-2023.
These criminals are emboldened. A lot of them have knives and guns and so forth. And that's why we're asking Albany to please consider harsher penalties for these criminals.
So shoplifting is shutting down businesses all over the city, which is terrible. But what nobody's talking about is that the laws passed recently by New York City in order to make the world a better place by limiting what people can be arrested for. Let's just say they're doing the opposite of that, and they're being taken advantage of by criminals, some of whom just want free stuff, and others who are professional shoplifters and steal things that are then resold on eBay, Amazon, Facebook Marketplace. Either way, crime pays in this city. And the frightening aspect to this is that the city has ignored businesses for so long that many of them can't hang on for much longer. On top of that, the plans city leaders have come up with to stop crime have not worked. 1 year ago, Mayor Adams announced a shoplifting crackdown. We can see how well that's working. And 2 months ago, the governor announced a $45 million plan to do the exact same thing. Maybe we just have to wait a little longer. But the problem is businesses can't do that. They can't wait forever for justice. And they feel abandoned by our lawmakers who recently decided not to increase penalties when retail workers are attacked. And because of this neglect, experts say it's only the beginning of New York City's shoplifting woes, and things are about to get a lot worse. So here we are in your typical drugstore, and all around you, you're gonna see things like these help buttons that you have to dial if you wanna have somebody unlock one of the plastic cages. And even items that look like they're on a shelf have these little tags right here that prevent you from taking them and bringing them to the register. And from one end to the other end, the whole thing is under lock and key. It's like a jail for products. And the alarming thing about this type of environment is that it exists at all. How can a city be so poorly run that this is the result? This isn't convenient. This is supposed to be a convenience store. And many people think that crime couldn't have gotten this bad unless this was being allowed to happen on purpose.
They perceive this as a refusal by the city to crack down on shoplifting, vandalism, violent attacks at a lot of retail stores and on the employees. After New York Governor Kathy Hochul recently announced a joint operation to combat retail crime.
So when you look at how actual businesses are dealing with New York City's current crime wave and shoplifting epidemic, it's obvious that the plans the city's come up with to try and stop it aren't doing anything. Critics say that any plan to stop crime has to be legal, and that's a problem because New York City's own laws don't actually allow anything to be done to stop this, which essentially means punishing crime is off the table. Look at this headline. Last year, we got a crime prevention plan from the mayor, and the best that it allowed shop owners to do was to text each other in WhatsApp groups that had the police as part of those groups. This plan allowed store owners to share information with each other about who was robbing them, and of course this information was being shared with police, but ultimately nothing was being done to stop those very same criminals. And the problem is many people say that this and all of the other plans that we have that are solutions to crime that don't actually punish people are never gonna work, because every month it seems like there's a new state or city sponsored initiative which comes along and never seems to change anything. But instead of having their needs actually attended to, business owners are being told that they're just imagining things. Crime is actually down.
What message is this sending about retail stores and the priority over safety?
We feel our government is not supporting us. Our members were essential workers. We prove how needy we were to the city and the state. It's like, okay, thank you. We don't care much about you.
So there's a lot here, but the main point is that stores like this, delis, bodegas, grocery stores, these are essential businesses, yet they're essentially being ignored. Think about it. How could life exist if a basket of groceries wasn't considered an essential thing that people needed access to? Why aren't we protecting stuff like this? And what's going to happen to a society where all of the stores are closed and you can't buy baby food down the street from your apartment anymore? Or things like medicine, or things like toothpaste. People need this stuff to exist in modern society. And who remembers just a few years ago when we couldn't stop hearing about how important essential workers were? Essential workers were out there on the front lines, running our stores, saving us, helping society keep going. And now we're letting them get shoplifted into oblivion. And honestly, the disrespectful attitude we have today is that, oh, your business's insurance will cover it. But stores don't have the plan to sell things to insurance companies. Insurance companies don't pay the full value of the stuff that gets looted from stores like this. Paying a deductible and receiving a lousy payout from some greedy company isn't a plan for success. No insurance company is going to pay you $10 for a tube of toothpaste. Hence why everything's locked up. Stores don't want to make money off insurance payouts. And to be honest with you, yes, corporate stores like this, they're going to have insurance, so they get something back if things get looted. But your bodega, your family-run business, they may not have anything like that. And for many business owners, it's just simply not worth paying premiums every single month for the insurance company to then just step in and deny all of your claims, or at least try to deny them. That's their goal after all. Let's just say if it's your store's business plan to make money from the insurance company, you probably aren't going to be in business for very long, that's for sure. And to add insult to injury, a lot of the stuff that gets stolen from stores like this winds up on online marketplaces and gets rebought by unsuspecting customers. But now the big question is, if this isn't being done on purpose, why is it that the government is ignoring these businesses? And could it really be that the government's goal is just to protect criminals whenever it can? Unfortunately, some people seem to think it is.
Recent study reported shoplifting increased 64% in New York City from 2019.
Shoplifters are just reaping the rewards. We are vandalized with shoplift almost every day on a constant basis.
So skeptics look at all this lawlessness and they say to themselves, there's got to be a political reason or some reason for why it's being allowed to happen. It seems maybe the shoplifting vote is more valuable than the business owner vote because now there are more shoplifters than there are business owners. But to many people, the idea that criminals can steal under $1,000 worth of stuff and it's just a misdemeanor, that's the real reason. So I asked the owner of this little kiosk right here if he ever has theft problems. He said yes. And look, right next to him you have a police car directing traffic. Nothing would happen to those criminals in this city. And it's strange to me that elected officials are saying increased penalties don't deter crime. It doesn't make sense to me how they can think that without some specific reason for doing so. Unless we're in one of those specific situations where people think that the laws that are passed haven't gone far enough. For example, they might think that there's still too much criminalization every time a place like this gets robbed, and we actually need penalties that are even lower than what we already have in order to really stop the problem. Boy, that's a slippery slope to be on. But is it not possible to observe how theft has increased since penalties for stealing were drawn down in the first place? Critics of soft on crime policies and politicians would say that this should be obvious to everybody who's looking at what's going around and sees how places like this are getting looted and how drugstores have everything behind a cage of plastic. And critics say that the refusal to punish criminals in this city is leading us in a very frightening direction. Stores that are open today could end up being shut down completely tomorrow. And if they don't completely shut down, they'll just have less to sell, or the prices will be much higher than they are today. Or you'll see that a deli like this, they just shut down the whole front of the store and build a little takeout window right here. And if you're not running a small business that gets shut down because of crime, like let's say you're running a Macy's or a Bloomingdale's, stores like that are going to have even more security, which is going to mean their prices have to go up even higher, and it's going to mean that even more stuff has a bicycle tag lock or something holding it to the store so that you can't steal anything, but you also can't buy stuff quickly. It's going to waste everyone's time because we just won't punish criminals. And as bad as this is for bodegas, think of what a lurch this puts a grocery store into. Like, how do you go about locking up bananas, steaks, lemons, other types of produce and things that don't really have a slot for a security tag to prevent them from being bagged up, lifted and stolen and brought to maybe a bodega down the street to be offloaded by criminals? It's terrible. And critics would say, since we're not interested interested in looking at obvious answers, New York City businesses are continually just left with the worst of possible options. And you might end up with a situation where businesses start pursuing the Costco model, where you need to pay some sort of membership fee just to get inside. Either way, needy New Yorkers who are already spending too much don't really have room in their budgets for higher prices because of societal mismanagement, and that's a big issue as well. Because every time something gets stolen, it is essentially a tax on the poor.
And are there some retailers that are targeted more often than others? Is there a certain time of day or night when they become targets?
Unfortunately, this type of crime happens at all times. It could happen at 8 in the morning, at 8 at night. This crime knows no boundaries.
The sad truth beneath all of this is that even if the city were to pass a very harsh law on shoplifting, we're short-staffed. Look at all these police cars. They're all just sitting here. We don't have enough police for the crime that we already have. And to give police officers the ability to police more crime, yes, that's a good idea, but you'd still have shoplifting tomorrow, even with a tough law, just because you don't have police in every store. And as you just heard, criminals are striking these stores at all hours of the day, and that's for reasons that aren't getting a whole lot of publicity. Because New York is now home to a $4.4 billion shoplifting economy. That's insane. All because shoplifters fear nothing when they walk into a little store like this and take whatever they want. And if the police won't stop you from stealing, why not start a business with ultra-low inventory costs? And this isn't about somebody like Aladdin stealing bread. No, we're talking about people that are stealing because that's their job. This is how they make a livelihood. And the one shop owner I spoke to with that little kiosk, he said if somebody who looks needy steals something, he doesn't care. He lets it happen. There's also not a whole lot he can do about it, and just the fact that professional thieves are now starting their own businesses, that's a disaster for the city. And again, we're talking about businesses built on the idea that insurance will cover it. Not exactly a formula for paying the highest rents in the entire country at your little store or shop. But the other frightening thing is that even if businesses jack up security and lock up every single thing on the shelves, there's only so much that's gonna do in a city where criminals don't care about crime.
Some of the stores are combining things by putting cameras in their stores, by adding extra security, by having more personnel. But all this is at a cost to the consumer, because this costs a lot more money to do, and it's not...
So what we're essentially witnessing here is security theater. Cameras in a little store can record the moment it gets broken into by masked thugs. It can record the moment they take this ATM somewhere else to break into it later. But if the police aren't able to track down these criminals and do anything about it, what's gonna happen to them? All because some people believe shoplifting and theft are non-violent offenses, and as such, they don't have any actual victims because everything's covered by insurance. But is that even a valid argument that shoplifting's non-violent and that nobody's actually getting hurt? And what about the idea that not punishing non-violent crime leads to violent crime? What about that? Is there a connection there?
It is a random, unprovoked slashing caught on surveillance video. Watch the man in a hoodie instigate a dispute with a cane. The man is provoking, 71 years old. The man in the blue shirt, a deli employee, then tries to intervene. The suspect then...
So pretty much everything about this story is terrible, and this is what New York City's valuable essential workers are being subject to when they show up at little places like this fruit stand to earn a living. And workers at places like this are essentially putting their lives on the line, creating an environment where the very businesses that exist to help people are now in danger.
Oh yeah, they rob us blind.
Do they take stuff like right off the street, just run away? That's tough.
We try to leave it out here because you want to know something. New York is getting so bad that the people are scared to walk outside anymore. We've been on this avenue 40
years. Have you ever seen it this bad in 40 years?
Never.
Never?
Never.
And the idea that this is non-violent, think of the mentality of somebody who's used to walking into a store and just doing whatever they want. If someone tries to stop them, that is going to be an offensive, provocative move, and look at what it leads to. It leads to people getting attacked, people getting injured.
The suspect then swipes at the 71-year-old with a box cutter. Jose Navarro is that deli employee who stepped in. Navarro says the 71-year-old is his friend and that the suspect took not one, but 3 swipes at his friend's...
You know what's crazy is this is exactly what happens when there's knife crime on the subway. You've got people in a small spot, and the idea that criminals are getting away with stuff like this at little mom and pop shops or any shop is just ridiculous. And at what point is it attempted murder to try and cut somebody with a sharp weapon? And what's crazy is things haven't always been like this in New York City, and it's only been about 5 years since the laws were passed that have been putting people's lives in danger when they try to serve food. And the laws in question here are referred to as bail reform laws, which were passed in 2019. The theory at the time was too many people were being arrested and put in jail for non-violent offenses. And since being in prison can negatively affect one's future, it was thought that we should stop putting people there unless they had done something something really, really bad. Now on paper, this sounds like a good, well-intentioned piece of legislation. But in practice, it now means the justice system is upside down. And now when crimes are committed, they are grouped as either qualifying or non-qualifying offenses. Assault qualifies as something you can be put in jail for, but a misdemeanor like theft of under $1,000 does not qualify, which means the criminal can still be charged with a crime, they can even be arrested, but they can't be held in advance of their court case playing out. On top of that, what not everybody's aware of is that in 2020, a provision was added to New York City's bail reform package that allows repeat offenders when it comes to shoplifting to be held in jail, but judges that interpret these laws and apply them to criminal cases, they don't see it that way. For example, look at this ridiculous story. You had shoplifters walk into a Target and pull a backpack off the shelf, cut the security tag off of it, and then start walking around the Target, filling it with other merchandise they had planned to steal. And when the police finally showed up and tried to intervene in this situation, the shoplifters attacked the police officers. 3 of the 4 people that ended up being arrested that day were released without bail. On top of that, every single person who was arrested had prior offenses. Yet only 1 individual was held on bail, and it was $3,000 bail, not the $10,000 bail prosecutors were asking for. Now, nobody wants to see well-meaning people who are just trying to feed themselves in the back of a police car. But the idea that one has to steal to feed themselves in this country isn't something that everybody agrees with. And you know who really suffers from all this theft and all this crime? It's the vast majority of people who are not rich, but who are also not criminals. These are people who, in spite of their circumstance, whether they're an asylum seeker living in the city shelters or an American who is using the safety net to get by, these are people who are doing the right thing. They're using the resources that they have to make their lives better, and they're not committing crimes because they're in a tough situation. Yet these are the people whose piggy banks are being punished every time they try to buy something because stores are jacking up their prices faster than inflation just to stay open in the first place. Making shoplifting in all of its forms a tax on the everyday working man who didn't do anything to deserve being robbed or victimized. Should New York City have actual penalties when stuff like that happens, or are the penalties we have now too harsh? And is that the reason why we have crime? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.